All right, so welcome back to the Possibility Storm. This week I am doing a special sort of additional content piece here that has to do with the great competitive Pauper EDH format. I am joined today by Ankylosaur, aka David, up here, and you guys seen this guy's face before on the channel. That's Gator. We all just recently participated in the third Sanctuary Open Series tournament that happened this past weekend, and we all had varied experiences. One of us here, I won't spoil it, but one of us here won the whole thing, and some of us didn't. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. But yeah, basically just wanted to get some people together that had different experiences in the tournament and kind of give a little bit of a recap of what happened, as everyone's experiences are obviously a little bit different than each other's. With, obviously somebody taking the whole thing, that's a way different experience than what somebody who doesn't win has. So thought we could give you some different angles and stuff. I also had some kind of hot button issues I wanted to talk about, things, chatter, whatnot, that I've heard around the community that are interesting thought processes and thought pieces that I thought we might be able to have a little bit of a chat about and see what your guys' perspective is on those. So then I do have some more pointed questions towards Gator that I guess kind of gives away the secret, but we have some more interview style stuff that I'm going to ask Gator here in a little bit. So roundtable followed by a little bit of an interview, and hopefully anybody that's interested in the format can enjoy this and maybe glean a little bit out of what happens in the tournament scene, and might get some people more interested in trying to push towards that. I know when I started, I had no thought of even trying to play in a tournament, and now I've done 3 of them. So it is a process, but it's still something that you may end up wanting to do if you're competitively minded like I am and others are. So yeah, first of all, David, thank you for joining us. If you'd like to let people know where they can find you around on the interwebs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
For sure.
So I make YouTube videos every now and then at Ankylosaur MTG on YouTube. I've been playing competitive Pauper EDH since March or February of this year. I'm still pretty new to the format, but I've really enjoyed the tournament scene and have really enjoyed getting to, explore and see what this EDH format's all about.
Yeah, it's been cool. I remember, I want to say that you participated in my last marathon stream as a newer player.
Absolutely,
although it seems that you've kind of taken some leaps and bounds and have gotten all the way up to being somebody that's doing stuff in the tournament scene. So that's pretty cool. I'm hoping that these kinds of videos can bring in more people like you who are like, I'm interested, but I don't know. And, we can kind of guide them along. So
yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Gator, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since we've chatted over on this end of the thing, but we recently did a little bit of a collab in that I edited one of your videos.
Yes.
So how have things been going with your podcast as well?
Oh, absolutely fantastic. And if you guys don't know yet, a little bit of spoiler, he kind of did it. Islane is actually our new editor, and I'm actually very, very excited, very pleased with the work he does and everything like that. So thank you so much again for the great work you've done thus far. And I'm actually very excited for you to continue working with us. So me and Puzzle are very, very happy to have you along with us. So
yeah, it was fun to do. And I kind of like getting the sneak preview of the video before it comes out. That's kind of nice. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know me and Gator participated in all 3 of these Sanctuary tournaments. Were you in the first one as well, Dave?
I wasn't. That was before I was playing in the format.
Gotcha. Okay. Just curious because we may end up referencing the other ones, and I wasn't sure if you were in the first one or not.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So to get things started, I guess we can kind of run through our individual records, what decks we were playing, that sort of thing. So I'll start. You may have noticed in the name, I did name this the Scrub, the Finalist, and the winner. Well, I'm the Scrub. I ended up going 0-2-1, so that's no wins, 2 losses, and a tie. I ended up dropping for the 4th round because my record was where it was, and I knew there was no way to get to the top cut, so I just dropped out. Individually speaking, I mean, it wasn't a bad experience. I did have a pretty okay first game. I was pretty dominant coming out. Oh, by the way, I was playing Severus and Cloakwood Hermit, which is what I played in the last tournament as well. The last tournament didn't go well either, so this one a little bit better, but still disappointing by my own standards because I did want to do better. But regardless, had a really strong opening game. Felt like it was my game to lose, but kind of made a mistake in an interaction battle with another player that subsequently unlocked the combo players at the table, and then they were able to win, and I no longer had the interaction to stop them. So unfortunately, nobody else did either, so they got to go and take the win. In the second game, I was kind of focused for whatever reason. I don't know if it was just boogeyman thing because I've been playing the deck a lot or what, but I was first man out and then sat and watched while they went to time, and that was where the draw came from. And then the third round, someone's internet just completely shit the bed, and they were unable to play. So we ended up playing 3-man. I was up against Puzzle and Gator's daughter at that point, and she got a little aggressive with me, and I ended up being to where I was almost dead, and had she have killed Puzzle, maybe she would have had a hard time killing me. I think that was her fear. But it ended up being where the damage she put on me, if she would have put it on Puzzle, he would have died before he would have been able to get to combo. So that's just 3-man pods make weird decisions like that happen. I don't blame her at all. It's just one of those things where it's like, what do I do now? Because I'm used to 4 players, you know? So she made a choice. She stuck with it. I commend her for being thorough with what she was trying to do. But yeah, from my perspective, it looked like I got kind of targeted, and then the combo player wins again. So then at that point, like I said, I dropped. But overall, I still had a good time. It was a fun experience. It's unfortunate that there were the technical issues from the one player, and then, just, in my opinion, some poor decision making on my own part in the one game, once other people's parts in other games. It is what it is. We're going to get to some of that kind of stuff later, but I just wanted to kind of give a quick run through of what happened with my game. You two had better records. David going 2-1-1, made the final top 4 cut, and Gator went 3-1-0 and made the top 4 cut as well. And then we'll let you guys kind of discuss your perspective of how you got. Well, we'll start with David. How was it getting to the finals? And then we can kind of discuss the finals together with the two of you.
So I was playing my Satyr Enchanter deck, and thinking about it in hindsight, I think I won the games that I was able to win. The one loss that I had was against Gator, and there were some tough decisions in that game for sure. Gator cast a Ophidian Eye and a Trickery Charm at one point, and there was a lot of discussion at the table, like, what should we counter? Should we make it so he can't draw a bunch of cards, or should we make it so he can't go for a win attempt? Lots of discussion. I think we made the right choice, but in the end, Gator wound up drawing a whole bunch of cards and winning. And I felt like kind of a dog in that pod in general. The other 2 matches that I did win, I was able to shut down the combo players with some of my auras that turn off abilities for some of it, and suit up Satyr with some big auras and beat people down before the combo decks could get out from under that. I also got lucky. Like, that's the thing that happens. Other people had instant speed removal to stop some combo attempts that I'm not playing a ton of instant speed interaction. There's a little bit in the deck, but I did get bailed out by someone that had a snuff out. Puzzle had a counter spell for somebody else's win attempt.
Yeah, to be fair, in my first round, I got bailed out. I think it was Clay or one of the combo players I know ended up where they probably could have won, and somebody else had interaction to stop them. So yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat. I don't run a ton of. I have instant speed interaction. It's just a lot of it is more protective. The feign death type stuff, rather than proactive, like I'm removing stuff. There is that too, but a lot of it also requires the sacrifice of a creature, which if I don't have that, then the spell is less good. So yeah. Anyhow.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I think that's a thing that has to be said. Like, sometimes it can't always just be on you. Like, you can't always be table police. Sometimes the difference between a win and a loss is somebody else had the interaction that the table needed to stop a combo player, which did open the door for me to win.
Or in the case of my big mistake, I interacted with the wrong player that opened up the other guy to win. So yeah, I mean, it goes both ways.
Sure,
Sometimes the combo player gets unlocked. Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I intentionally drew in round 4, and then we played that out anyways. And that game was a slog. That was a very long game that we played out. That Zada wound up winning on turn like 14 or something.
Gator, what was your experience? But outside of the finals, how was your experience going into it?
Well,
and also, what deck were you playing?
I was playing Malcolm Kedis. So it's a deck that I've been playing quite a bit. I actually played it in the last event as well.
I played it in the first one.
yeah. I mean, it's a great deck. I did tweak it to correct my mistakes from the last event. Round 1 was, I believe, the longest round of the event, excluding Inks, that was a draw. I won that in turn 11, and we only had a couple minutes left in time when I had won that. That was that was a battle. All interactive decks, and they wanted me dead from turn 2. But excluding that round, the next round was with David, and my daughter really set the pace for that game. And that game was just turn 1 Dargo. So as soon as the turn 1 Dargo hit the table, the three of us were like, okay, what do we do? Like, and it was kind of like we all kind of had to help each other. And because we helped each other, it gave me the window to win, because everybody was just so focused on the Dargo just smothering the table. And she was able to just continue to recast it as well. So it wasn't like it was just Dargo was gone. Yeah, so just Dargo was gone but came back immediately, and it just kept coming back. So that was it was a wild game. Like Ank said, there was a decision point with the Ophidian Eye and the Trickery Charm where the table, we took like a 3-minute conversation. And as Ank knows, I'm really honest when I play the game. So like I told him the truth. I was like, look, guys, Trigger Charm will literally let me win the game. I know you guys know this, but like, I'm not going to lie to you guys. We're going to discuss it and like, just be honest with each other. And I was like, this Ophidian Eye will let me draw like probably a ton of cards. Like realistically, I'm probably going to draw a lot. But if I have the card in my hand to win the game, Trigger Charm is a win attempt here. So I'll let you guys decide which way to do it. But whichever one of these resolves, it's how the game is going to progress or not progress. And they were like, yeah, we get it. And then I kind of stayed quiet, and the rest of them had their discussion, and they ended up picking the Ophidian Eye to let me resolve. And it was a rough decision. Honestly,
Yeah.
It didn't matter what they picked there. It was kind of like a lose-lose situation for them, no matter what.
Yeah.
So I ended up pulling that out. Then I go into the next round. And the next round was my only loss, and that was to Malcolm and Arden. That was actually a very unique pod.
That was in my first. That was Kevin, right? That was playing that.
Yes.
He was in my first pod, and when he played, I was like, "What does this deck even do?" I was sitting there like, "I don't know what this deck is trying to do. Like, are you putting equipments on? Like, is Voltron? Like, I did not understand it at all, and I didn't really get to see what it did either, because literally the only thing that he did was he got a tandem lookout out attached to a pinger. It wasn't even a pinger. It was that horseshoe crab thing that can tap untap. And then he put a pinging effect on it, and then had tandem lookout attached to it. So he was able to just go ping, untap, ping, untap, ping, untap. He drew like 5 cards the turn before, and then he went after my my piece that he was trying to remove. It was the Essence Warden that was basically holding everybody back, because I had a Blight Priest as well. So every time I gained life, they all lost one. And TPI and Malcolm were both like, what do we do? Because if we start going off, we get a bunch of tokens, we're just dead. Because I was up to like 45 life, and they were down to like sub 15. So I knew why he wanted to unlock, but I had just seen him go and draw all those cards, and I was like, well, you're gonna unlock them, I'm gonna fucking kill your advantage piece. And then, like I said, immediately after I did it, I was like, oh no.
Yeah,
now
Abdel won like right on the
Abdel's, Abdel was like, yeah, I win now. So
Yep. Yeah, it's really
that deck seems interesting now that I know that it does, a little bit more about what it does. But at first I was just like, what is this?
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. It destroyed us. There were 3 Malcolms at the table. It was Malcolm Rogg, Malcolm Kedis, and Malcolm Arden. And the other deck was Jury. The game, I think, ended on turn 6, and it was just like, so I had dumped my whole hand by turn 4. Like I was just Bolt, Thunderclap, Echoing Truth, Fire Ice, like you name it. There was like a Feign Death. We had this giant battle. It was just it was a rough game, and Malcolm Arden was just in charge the whole time. And as soon as the war ended, the Horseshoe Crab had a psionic gift or a hermetic study. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was one of the two pinging effects. And at no point could any of the three of us resolve a creature. And he just went for a win attempt. We stopped it. Then he reanimated it, went for a win attempt. We stopped it. Then he reanimated it, and we were like, okay, you just got it all. And he went for a win attempt again, and we lost. Like, it wasn't even like he just dominated the whole game. So I lost that one. That was my one loss of the day. And then the last round before the finals was against Puzzle. And the two other players was a Demir deck, Puzzle, and a Orzhov deck. So the Orzhov deck was a Voltron deck, Cartel Aristocrat. And the blue-black Demir deck was Val, which was a combo deck. And the Val deck mulliganed quite low, and the Cartel Aristocrat was in 4th seat in their Voltron deck. So I didn't have to worry about really much of them throughout the match because one of them mulliganed to such a low point, and the Orzhov deck was just trying to get through its combat damage. So I was able to kind of have to forcefully pay attention to Puzzle, and Puzzle was doing a good job of tempoing me with the Malcolm. But we ended up getting into this fight on turn 5 when I went to attack, and I was able to storm off during that turn with just instant after instant after instant after instant. And it was the same similar situation with the Trickery Charm on the stack, create all the treasures, and then I put a Tandem Lookout attached to it and just essentially went to town with all the pinging effects. So it was I took a long turn. I think my turn was about like 10 minutes long. It was quite a long turn because it was non-deterministic. I had to keep pushing through with it. But I was able to speed it through and end it quite quickly. But excluding that, it was still kind of a sweaty game because if I didn't win that turn, Puzzle would have won on his turn. So it was a really tight game, to say the least. So.
Yeah, well, just knowing Puzzle's in your match, like, I see Puzzle win out of nowhere, I see Puzzle win on 1 life, I see him do all this shit all the time, so, like, if he's in my game, he's the guy that I'm usually worried about, unless there's, at least, somebody else, like yourself or someone that I'm also having to worry about. Yeah, Puzzle's just a good player. Even if he hasn't won much here recently, still somebody to watch out for.
Well, like
sure.
Certain players do, you're able to read what certain players do, and the one tell that he gave me that game was he went turn 1 island nothing, turn 2 Simic Growth Chamber, return my island, discard down, pass. And when he did that, I immediately knew that his hand was gas. So for him to keep a hand to not take 2 game actions and to discard down against me, I was like, okay, your hand's sauce. I would have
never thought that. Somebody plays a Simic Growth Chamber, I'm like, oh, this guy ain't got shit.
Oh, dude, as soon as he did that, I was like, okay, this dude his hand is like he's going to stop me for the next 1 or 2 turns. I need to get the interaction to stop him now, because I went from thinking I'm the threat to he's the threat. I need to make sure I could stop him. And it was like he untapped and snapped my creature immediately, created a whole bunch of mana, played Gretchen, played a spell bomb, untapped because he had the mana creature that says when you play a lane, untap it. So he was just like do.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. He kept sauce, guys. Like, you see what's happening here. Like, I'm your only hope. Let me handle this. So it was a very interesting game.
So then the 2 of you made Top Cut. I know obviously how it ended, so do you two, but what were your thoughts? I guess starting with David, what were your thoughts going into it? Like, you knew who you were facing, I'm assuming, so you kind of had a little bit of mental math, I'm sure. Like, what am I doing? What am I mulliganing for? That kind of thing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I was going up against the Florida crew. Franklin and Gator and Kevin. My only hope in that match was that the 3 of them would be able to, like, get into sort of a standoff against each other and leave me alone.
Yeah.
And so, I mulled the 6, but I kept a hand with 2 pieces of interaction. I had a Ward of Lights to try and stop a combo attempt, and I had a Chains of Custody that I could put on one of my creatures and exile somebody else's creature that way. And like it wasn't a stellar hand. I had Plains, Opal Palace, and a Generous Ent. So I had to spend my turn 2 going to go and get the green-white duel.
Right.
Funnily enough, if I had Eagles of the North, I would have had the mana for Ward of Lights to try and stop Gator. But just, one of those things. I had the wrong land cycler, and I had to play a tapped land instead of playing an untapped Plains. I'll let Gator spoil how the ending went in case you're not familiar. But yeah, so that was my hand. That was what I was expecting going into it. I was expecting to have a rough time. But yeah, Gator, how did it go?
Well, I mean, as turn 2 showed, I probed you. And the reason I had probed you, which was a little bit confusing for a few different people, was I wanted to Cataxian probe you because you were the only player that could turn off my Malcolm, and I wanted to make sure that I could see what you were doing, because China had already told the table, the other Malcolm player, that I'm going turn 2 Malcolm. So the player I was worried about the most, stopping me from winning the game, that could have Stave Off and or Vines of the Vastwood, would be you. Mm-hmm. So I was very worried about you as a whole for my turn 3 win attempt. And I was like, well, David stops me, he's going to be able to stop me, so I need to see his hand. If he doesn't have anything, I'm going for it. This is where we're going to go for the turn 3 win. And you didn't have it, so I felt way more comfortable attempting to win on turn 3. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know on the commentary they were like, why is he get probing that guy? Like, there's these other players at the board that have blue are probably going to stop him on the stack. When you hear your reasoning, it makes sense. And of course, they could have still had the counter spells, and you would have had to deal with that. But you lucked out.
Well, also too, like one reason why I kept my hand the way I did was because 1, I was on the play, and 2, I do have a bad matchup there. For the record, like people assume that my matchup was great there. The Ardent Malcolm deck crushes me, so that's already a bad matchup to begin with. From all the Viridian Longbows and all those pinging effects is so strong against me, so I have to blitz them to win the game against them. But then I have to worry about David in C3, which I can't deal with once that creature gets a certain size with all those protection effects. So now I'm worried about David. But now if I'm worried about David, once Abdel starts establishing a board state, I also can't deal with that. So I was like, my opening hand, which I had sent to the table, we were really talkative prior to the match. We all were taking pictures of our hands when we were mulliganing and stuff like that, which was super cool. And we were sharing it with each other after the match. And my opening hand that I wanted to keep, which I was very confident in for the record, was all control pieces. I had Heated Debate, I had Lightning Bolt, I had the lands. The hand was very well sculpted to be seat 1, control the other 2 players, and deal with the Abdel, because Abdel only mulled to 5. So I was like, I'll leave Abdel for last, because it's the slowest deck at the table, and deal with the first 2. Especially the fact that China kept a second 7, and I was very worried about China. In retrospect, ironically, if I didn't keep the hand I did, I think China wins that game, because their opening 7 was turn 2 Malcolm with protection, with half the combo, and 2 stop the table spells with Prismatic Strands, and I forget the other one, but it was something along those. I think it was a Crib Swap or something like that. But just gas on gas. And I'm like, wow, your hand is nuts. And he goes, yeah, I had turned 2 Malcolm with just gas for. You would never mull that away if you were in C2, right? So it was very interesting. It was honestly, when the game ended, the 4 of us were having a great time. We were talking and laughing, wow, it was fantastic. To us, at least.
It's also not the kind of thing you necessarily expect. We all know that CPDH has gotten fast enough to where you can have those turn 3, 4, or 5 wins, but the average win is what, turn 9, I think, according to the data, and I think maybe pushing more towards like turn 8, turn 7, because it just seemingly keeps getting faster. The more people that get involved and the more people that are testing and finding things out. Of course, decks like mine are still, turn 9, turn 10, if not longer. So, some decks just aren't built to do that fast, but it has seemingly gone a little bit faster. But I did watch the VOD, at least parts of it, and I know that this is going to lead me into, first off, congratulations on your win. Yeah, the field was pretty stacked, and getting it in that sort of impressive fashion is something to be proud of, regardless of variance and other shit that naysayers will say. But that does lead me into kind of some hot button topics that I wanted to discuss, because there was a lot of chatter after the fact, not only on the stream, but also just in various Discords and on Twitter and whatever, about just people's opinions on, whether or not decks are too greedy, if that, there's not enough interaction being played, there's not enough, or there's poor threat assessment, there's this, that, and the other thing. So we've kind of already gone over what our overall experience was, but, I do want to ask those couple questions, because I feel pretty strongly about the threat assessment thing. I might actually do a full video, or we might do a full podcast kind of episode on that, because I think it's an important thing that not everybody understands. And even though I know that everybody approaches the game a little bit differently, there still is kind of an overarching, like, it's hard to say this is correct and this is incorrect, but there's kind of a benchmark of like, this is proper threat assessment, and like anything outside of that, unless you have a good reason, is kind of looked at in like a bad way, kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth, whatever the case. Like, I had a couple of experiences like that in this tournament. So did you guys feel, whoever wants to start, I don't care, how did you feel about threat assessment in the tournament? Did you think that it was appropriate, or were there some instances where you thought that like people were making kind of poor choices and that may have affected the outcome of the game?
Yeah, I actually think my most notable round was round 1. That was a round where, as early as turn 3, I had one of the players at the table distinctly say, "We got to get Gator off the table." And I was kind of like, whoa, why?
Was
like,
your board state good at that point?
No, I had Malcolm was the only thing I had to play. It was like nothing, land, turn 3, Malcolm. That was it. And then it was turn 4, Kedis. And then treasures, pass. Turn 5, treasures, pass. Like, I was not like, no pingers were in play. There was no like crazy board states. It was just like,
you had nothing
playing.
That was showing that you were even close to a win.
Yeah, I had a full grip, sure. I wasn't looking as if I was even moving forward. I was just like, yeah, attack a player for 2. Everyone takes 2. All right, pass, go. Like, looking.
I've had a
like
lot of games with Malcolm like that. The thing I will say is, being someone who has played Malcolm, is I do realize that having all those treasures on the board means that if you do get the right pieces at the right time, you can do it all at once. Or if you get, like you said, in one of your games, you can have those series of cantrips where you're just like, cantrip, draw card, cantrip, draw 2, discard 2, cantrip, draw 2, discard 2, cantrip, blah, 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 flashback, deep analysis, do it again, and then all of a sudden you have combo pieces and you still have treasures to spare to play the combo out. I've won like that, so I can see where people could still be scared. Also, some of that
100%.
could be player recognition, just like you being who you are, like, he's the threat,
well,
just like I said about Puzzle.
Yeah, they weren't directing it like at me. Literally, they were directing it at the deck that I was playing, which I understand. It is what it is. But it was at that point in the game, it was so easy to be like, no, I'm not. Look at my board, and at no point do I ever lie. I'm just telling the truth. Like, I'm talking about like all of our board states. And in seat 1, we were playing against Gator, and Gator was just destroying us. Like, Gator was just wrath the field over and over again, killed everything everyone did for the whole game. But one of the players, which was Lobert, had a lifelinking deck. And what made this so relevant was Lobert continued to take away the attention from me because Carter couldn't kill Lobert without me staying at the table because Lobert kept gaining life and gaining life and gaining life and gaining life with all these life linking creatures, which kept pushing it and pushing it out of Cardor's reach to be able to kill. So even, let's just say I was killed and I left the table, they would have had to 1v1 and Carter would have ended up running out of time to win the game because of the amount of life. So we all would have ended up getting a draw. Right. So it was a very weird dynamic that was introduced to the table. So I was like the straggler at that table during the game, but it was very easy to deflect away from myself because at one point I actually throw my combo into play and I just let them nuke it off the planet. And they're like, oh, we dealt with it. I was like, you did. Don't look at me anymore. You killed it all. It's all dead. Yep. And they're like, yeah, we did. And I was like, see, that's the truth. You killed it. They didn't know I had the other half in my hand. So I just kind of waited for a window and just let Cardor just burn all of its resources, fighting the rest of the table. And as soon as Cardor just like ran out of a hand, I was like, combo? They're like, we knew you would win. I was like, I mean, I have to wait though. I can't just like throw it in play. You're going to kill it. It was really close. I almost failed at what I was trying to accomplish there because we only had a couple minutes left in round when I did win the game. So it was like right at the razor's edge, you know what I mean? So,
right.
But I ended up pulling it off. I don't agree with just killing the combo player. I've never felt like that sentiment is good. And I say that due to other decks that I play in the format like Gut. I love leaving a combo player straggling along. I just kill the enablers or I do certain things to certain pieces that they're very important for them.
Because they still might have interaction or whatever that comes in handy for you.
Exactly.
As long as you're not letting them combo, they're just a tool for you.
Exactly. Like, so for instance, if I was playing Gut and you were playing Severus is an easy example. I cannot battle against Severus 1v1. I will not win that fight. I know I'll lose that fight. So you're actually my first person that I want to look at to get off the table. But I can't ignore a combo player, so I have to still impact their board state while trying to take you off the board. Context
I think your point is that tunnel vision on anything just because you think it's right is not necessarily the case.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because tunnel vision on a particular thing, like as a mid range deck, at least in that the deck that I was playing in the tournament, I never felt like I should have been prioritized pretty much ever. The one instance, like you said, if you are the aggro deck, you may have trouble, which is I think why Caitlyn ended up coming after me in that one particular game, because she's like, I can't beat him in that long drawn out 1v1. He's just going to out life gain and yada yada. So that's probably why she decided to go after me. And that wasn't necessarily incorrect. I just felt in the context of we were in 3 players that we should have put Puzzle closer to death faster. Like I would have wanted to see her put 14 points on him and just leave him dangling there to where she could kill him whenever she wanted. And then also that puts him in range for me to drain him out and he's just gone. So that would have been the most beneficial for me. And I understand nobody else is playing for me. So there was no incentive for her to play that way. But also she loses to combo just the same as I do. So both of us kind of really needed to kill Puzzle and then just duke it out and see what happens. And I did that with Franklin in the first Sanctuary. I was on Malcolm Kedis, but still it was the same principle of like we killed the rest of the table and then went to the 1v1 and I just happened to draw into the right stuff to kill all of his skeletons and he was just like, yeah, I can't beat you, and that was the end of it. But
that 3-player dynamic is really rough. And also too, I will say for her, not as an excuse, but she is a bit jaded against Severus because I actually, well, obviously you know this, I have a copy of the Severus deck myself, and I play it all the time. It's one of my favorite decks to play. So she plays against it all the time. So I know that she is a bit jaded when she sees that deck because she knows what it could do. And
it ends up being kind of the same problem that person who said, we got to get rid of Malcolm, it was the same problem that she had there. Oh, I got to get rid of Severus.
Exactly.
And it ended the same way, basically. But
yep, exactly.
David, was there anything in particular that stood out to you that kind of felt off? Just anything in any of your games where you were like, man, that doesn't seem right?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so.
Okay.
My games were all, I don't want to say straightforward, but like round 1 I was facing against Malcolm Rograk and Puzzle on Gretchen, and then an Empyrean Eagle deck. Jonathan had the turn 2 Malcolm, which I was able to reprobation, and Puzzle had a turn 3 Gretchen, which I was able to Realmbreaker's Grasp, and take them both sort of out of the game for a while. Like I sort of presented myself as a threat, and like the two combo players were trying to deal with me. Meanwhile, the Flyers deck was like getting in shots where they could on the different combo decks and on me, just kind of spreading damage around. But there wasn't anything in that game where I was like, oh, I really think, like, for instance, the Flyers should totally just be going after me, or should totally be going after the Malcolm deck. Like, everybody that I played against seemed to understand what was most threatening at the time, and go after the people that I would attack. Basically, if there's anything that one could say, it's probably that my threat assessment was kind of mid. And the commentators did note that there were reasons for the decisions I made in round 3. I had opportunities to take out the Carter player and take out Stein on Zada with commander damage. And the commentators felt very strongly that I should be focusing on Clay, because Clay could at any point assemble a combo again and go off. They didn't know that I had instant speed interaction in my hand, and there's always a slim chance that the combo deck can play a protected combo and just kill everybody. But right. If there's anyone that had like sort of questionable threat assessment, it might have been me.
I didn't play with you, so I can't really comment on that. But
I mean, you can go and watch the VODs. I was on camera a couple times. You can watch it and decide for yourself. did I throw a couple games or make it harder for myself? You can find out.
I mean, you had a hell of a time dealing with me and Caitlin in round 2.
Oh, for sure.
That was, once again, like, that game was just, I think that was one of the hardest matches, if not the hardest match that all 4 of us played that day, because with the turn 1 Dargo, and I assembled the turn 3 Malcolm with a pinger out and stuff like that, it made it quite difficult because Ank had the O-ring. So once again, he had the decision to O-ring my Malcolm or the Dargo. But the Dargo had already been out for a turn, but the Dargo actually marked David for the 7. So It was like that hard decision. Well, do I let the Dargo now since the Malcolm is there? Maybe she'll decide to take out Gator, or she comes at me again and I die. Do I risk that? Like, risk it for the biscuit? I don't, it was such a hard game because, like, the turn 1 Dargo was no joke. Like, we were just all on the back burner. But then I assembled my win attempt, so now it's like, who are you supposed to go after at this point? Like, the Dargo's going to win first, but maybe he doesn't have it. And now we're also still looking at Abdel over here just hanging out, staring us all down. Yep. And, like, it was just... It was rough.
I was on... When I had the O-ring and could have taken out Malcolm or Dargo, I was also on 12 life. And I was like, Gator had a grip full of cards and could possibly go off at any moment. And Caitlin had a Dargo. and I was, I was not quite literally dead, but like almost certainly dead to the Dargo. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I tanked on that for a long time. And in interest of making a play, I went after the Dargo, and Gator was able to win. But I think I was able to win the games I was able to win. And that was a game that I was just... I don't think there was...
Damned if you do, damned if you don't, kind of.
I don't think there was a chance of me winning that game for like multiple reasons. But
I mean, I'm not trying to say that there is like a perfect threat assessment in every situation. And a lot of times hindsight is, I know I threw my first game. Like, I know that in hindsight. I knew it as soon as I did it. But I didn't know it in the heat of the moment because I was just like, fuck you, I'm doing this thing. And then, well, it bit me in the ass. Sometimes that's how it goes. And I wasn't trying to call anybody out or say that people are playing poorly or whatever. It's just, I think threat assessment is a very important skill that takes a long time to really hone in. especially if you're somebody that came from a different format. The threat assessment is a lot different here than it is in CDH, for example. Again, not trying to call anybody out, throw people under the bus. Like, I saw some stuff that I was like, maybe we don't do that. Like, I got singled out in, not singled out, but I had the Carter player in my second pod. I don't even remember who else was in the pod. I just know that the Carter player managed to like goad us continuously. And so I was swinging with stuff that I didn't want to be swinging with, but eventually it got to a point where like I was in the clear, but I'm doing like 2 damage, whereas other people are swinging for 4 or 5 or more. And a lot of people were still choosing to just attack me. I don't know necessarily if that was the right call, but yeah, I ended up getting eliminated, and they apologized after the game. They're like, man, I'm sorry for taking you out so fast. And I was like, well, you didn't really take me out. You just forced everyone into combat, and so people made choices. It is what it is. I don't know necessarily that I should have been taken out first, because maybe I would have been able to help the table with things, but at the same time, there's so many variables that go into threat assessment that like I said, there's no perfect way to do it, but I think that some people do get that tunnel vision and think, if I'm this type of player, then it automatically I have to go after this player or this type of deck or whatever, and I don't think it's ever that clear cut and dry. I think that there's always going to be variables and things to consider.
Well, I do know something that has happened in the past. I'm not saying that that's what happened in this round in your event, but I do know that certain players that play their respected deck time and time and time again, and the deck gets known within the community, and or the player gets known within the community. It has happened historically, like these are facts, that they will get targeted down because they are playing their deck and they're known for that deck. So it has happened. I'm not saying it happened in this event, but there's potential that could happen in the future, and it has already happened. So you are someone that has been playing this Sivirus deck for quite a long time now and has made some waves through the community with it. So, I could definitely see someone targeting you down because, hey, you're that Islane guy. You're that guy. We need to get you off the table, Yeah,
it's possible. And I don't think that that's what was happening necessarily, but it also just felt weird being the first one dead, considering I wasn't on combo or anything like that. And generally in most of my games, I noticed... So when I first started playing the deck, I noticed a lot of people would just kill Sivirus a lot, and it would piss me off because it's like, it doesn't do anything until I actually get an engine. It just doesn't. Like, yes, it gives me some card advantage, but it's not even card advantage. A lot of times it's just putting shit into my graveyard because people will pay the life because they're at high life totals and they don't care. So it's not even really an advantage engine until like mid to late game. So yeah, it was like, man, why kill my Sivirus right away? And I think it may have been in that game where I did actually get it removed or countered or something. I don't recall, but there was a game where somebody removed it before I even got to activate it, and I was like, really? Man, come on. But that could just be my own personal opinion. I don't think that it's worth removing unless it's like later game where, taxes have become a factor. Again, that's to each their own kind of thing. But as I played it more often, I noticed more people would let it stick because they realized, why remove it? Because it's not really doing a whole lot. It's just, it does keep me with a full grip a lot, but like I'm also not running a ton of interaction, so
we need you in the game. Like I don't see why you would just cut a player off at their legs, right? Because then we lose that aspect of you assisting the table. And similar to what you both were saying earlier today, right? Like especially David was talking about, if that player has that removal spell and then I could capitalize and win the game, that's exactly what could happen. So right. Me cutting you off at your legs seems a bit kind of absurd.
Might as well let me do some drain to the table before you do it. And then cut me off when you're going to be able to possibly capitalize enough to win. All right, so I mean, I think we've gotten it that the threat assessment wasn't terrible, and that's good. I was concerned that there may have been more of that there. So another thing that came up, and it was kind of right at the end, after the win, commentators in the stream and then also just people on Discords and stuff were saying that basically, well, it's not as much fun to watch a turn 3 win, which, I don't know, I disagree, but I'm a CDH player, so like I like playing and getting more games in as opposed to long, drag-out 2-hour games. I've always been a fan of like okay, you got it. Shuffle up. Let's play another one. You know, who cares? Like, I do not give a shit that you won on turn 3. Like, I get it's a final and they wanted something maybe a little more entertaining for a longer period of time, but like, there's something to be said about being able to bust out a turn 3 win in this format with only commons. So I'm not hating it. Regardless, people were kind of saying that decks seem very greedy. They're only running, you know, the fastest mana they can and rituals and things, and not eschewing interaction for those pieces so that they can just go and roll a die and win on turn 3 once in a while. I find that funny. Obviously, whoever was making the commentary doesn't play Malcolm Kedis, because, I mean, like you said, I was able to present turn 4 or 5 wins, like 3 games in a row with it, with no issue. It's not hard to do. It's a deck with enough redundancy that you just literally try, and if you fail, you try again next turn. And you keep doing that, and you make people have it, and if they don't have it, you just win. I don't see a problem with that, but there's a chunk of the population that doesn't like seeing that that sort of turbo. I see it happen a lot in CDH too. People who complain about, you know, turn 2 wins and turn 2 ad nauses and turn 2 Thoracle wins and stuff, and it's boring and blah, blah, blah. I get it. It is kind of boring to watch that over and over again, but having it exist, I don't think is a problem. But the overall sentiment was that there's not enough interaction being run in these decks, which I thought was kind of funny because I know we all run some. And shortly thereafter, between the tournament and I think it was yesterday or the day before, Puzzle did a little bit of analysis for his own channel and put out a video about whether or not the decks that were played in the tournament were quote-unquote greedy and didn't run enough interaction. I was surprised. My deck is running 19 pieces of interaction by his calculations. I was like, man, I thought I only had like 10. So, you know, it really depends on how you assess what is interaction. And you and I had a conversation the other day about how it was subjective. Like, is this piece actually interaction or not? Everybody's going to have kind of a different definition of that. But even if you just go strictly instant speed interaction, most decks were running more than enough. And the stats ended up saying that the decks with the most interaction, there was a couple that were non-combo, but I think it was 3 out of the 6 or 7 combo decks that were in the tournament ran more than the average out of the rest. My deck ran more than the average, whereas there were some of the other decks that was like kind of surprising. Like a couple of them were only on like 3 pieces of interaction. I was like, yeah, you're never interacting at all.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I think it's Pyro and Red Blast. I think that's it.
Yep.
I mean, you're not going to be stopping much with that, but I guess when your game plan is to just not give a shit and just go, that's how it is. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think that people were running without, you know, knowing what we were just saying as far as the numbers go, but like when you were playing, did it feel like people were running enough interaction, or was it kind of silly like how you had in your final where nobody had it and you just got to win?
I think looking at the finals, as I was talking with Gator a little bit before the podcast, and you have to remember that a turn 3 win like that, it's happened twice this year. You know, Gator in the finals, and then Clay had posted some stats earlier, and somebody else has gotten a turn 3 win in the format this year. But you can't look at something that happens as rare as that and feel like the answer is, oh no, I don't have enough interaction, I need to be able to stop a turn 3 win. It's not going to come up with any real frequency. And sometimes they just have it, and sometimes you don't have the interaction and you just lose. And I think that's an acceptable thing to understand and bake into your, like, mulligan decisions and things like that. Like, you could go to 5 every game looking for, you know, that spell that's going to make sure that somebody isn't going to go off on turn 3. And, you know, mulligans are a whole nother issue. It's something that I definitely need to practice more, and I need to work on, just like my threat assessment. I know that those are the 2 areas of this format that, you know, I could definitely stand to improve.
I mean, at the end of the day, you have been playing in this format for less time than me. I've only been in it for like maybe a year and a half. You're less than that, and you've already made a finals. I still haven't done that. So, I mean, you're doing something right.
Sure, yeah. But I also think it's important to like recognize the areas where you can improve. And I know that those
Oh, of
are for
course.
me two places that I could definitely stand to get better. But as I was talking about with the interaction, sometimes you just have to keep a good hand, and that hand isn't going to necessarily be able to interact with everything or interact with somebody that's going to win on turn 3. You can't just throw that away because you're afraid that somebody is going to have the land and the Lotus Petal and the Simian Spirit Guide for the turn 1 Malcolm and be able to also like make their land drops and get
Who would have a hand like that, man?
yeah. Or like, a turn 1 Dargo, which also I faced down in the tournament. Like those are certainly things that can happen, but they're not, in my opinion, things that you need to always be afraid of. Because there's also like 2 other players at the table who may be able to bail you out, who present a different kind of threat that you only get 7 cards. You only get 7 cards to start with, and like at a certain
If you're
point,
lucky,
you have to
sometimes
be
you got less.
like, and sometimes you get less. Yeah, I was on 6 in the finals, and my 6 was medium, but as I said before, it had the Ward of Lights and it had Chains of Custody, and if I didn't die on turn 3, I was going to be able to interact with the table and like start doing my game plan as well.
Right.
And so
It's funny. There was a conversation I had on, I think it was in the home base maybe, but I was basically, some people were pushing back on my list and saying like, oh, you don't run in enough interaction. And at that time I was running like, I think 3 or 4 pieces less than I'm running now. So it wasn't like I wasn't running any, but they were just like, oh, it's not enough. So finally I made some concessions. I made some changes, added some pieces in. And but when before I actually conceded, I was arguing back and forth about like I don't need it. What about there's going to be other blue players. There's going to be other people at the table. They're exactly what you just said. Somebody else may be able to handle that for me. And I was told that that's parasitic behavior or something, and I shouldn't do that and this and that. And I was like, man, well, but it's true. Like there's 3 other people at the table besides yourself. If everyone is running an adequate amount of interaction and has adequate threat assessment, then we all should be stopping at each other more or less equally, right? So I don't see how that was a bad attitude for me to have, but that's what I was told. So either way, I added more interaction, but still.
I don't know. You can't know everybody else's hands. You can't know their threat assessment as well. Who they think is going to be the person that they're looking to stop. But and it's not something that you can always count on. But I do think that in a 4-player game, it's hard to be the table police all the time. Like you can put as much interaction in your deck as you need to have a reasonable chance, a reasonable amount of the time to stop other players. Somebody I was talking with described interaction and removal like that as sort of a social contract. Like when you sit down to the table, you sort of expect that other people are also going to abide by the contract of like, yes, I'm going to be prepared as well for the threats that we're all going to be dealing with. I don't know. I sort of like that thinking. And like sometimes nobody's going to have it. Sometimes somebody's going to have it and they're going to save it for you instead of for the person you're hoping they use it on. I worry about looking at interaction as a certain number that you need to have, and if you reach that threshold, then like you're good. And I worry that talking about like different types of interaction too. I know I got some pushback as well for not just my Seder list, but for green white in general. Like what kinds of interaction they have and what sorts of removal they have.
You're bringing up a really good point, and I really want to caveat off of it really quick, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Something you said, it was like how much and how often and whatnot, and you're bringing me back to a conversation that I've been really wanting to have and discuss about, is that people are also ignoring the velocity a deck could have. So let's say I have, as an example, I'm just going to throw a random number, 10 pieces of removal. but my deck velocity, as in card draw, and the way I'm able to like push through the deck itself is stronger, faster, tutor-wise is more efficient than other decks. Those 10 pieces of interaction are going to be more efficient than your 20 pieces of interaction because I can actively look, hunt, and acquire mine in comparison to you with 20.
That was part of my argument with Sivris, was that like I churn through the deck, so I get to the interaction. I never feel like I don't have it, and it does.
Exactly.
It still happens, but you're more likely to draw into it than the guy who has is mono red. Mono red isn't drawing any cards really. They do, but they don't. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like,
yeah, exactly. And I mean, that should definitely be a point. Like, you can't look at it in a vacuum and say, oh, number is the only thing that we need to pay attention to, right? Because a lot of people look at Abdel. Abdel has like been a large discussion because the statement Abdel has had, well, blue-white Abdel specifically, is that Abdel is greedy, right? Because it only plays a small amount of interaction. But what people forget that deck is doing is with all of the Archaeomancer effects and all of those cards that deck has, that deck could just turn into a control deck when it decides to. It could just go, guess what? I don't want to win the game. I'm just going to return counter spells and counter everything you do for the entire game. Will that let me win the game? No. But I could do that. But why would I do that over just winning the game, right? Similar to like, I'm not trying to pick on a deck list, but like Carter, right? With 30 removal spells, right? Could we potentially, I'm just throwing the things out there, but maybe we switch a few of those cards for more win conditions so the deck can actually progress and move forward with a way to win the game, right?
Well, and that was something we talked about, is that like some of the older heads in the community, and not that they don't have a lot of wisdom that I probably don't have. They obviously been around for a long time, but it's been, I wasn't here for it, but it's been expressed to me that like CPDH even 5 years ago was a completely different format, and it was very much almost everything was control, and they sat back and they just tried to stop everybody else from winning and tried to wait for their window and yada yada, those types of things. Whereas now there's a lot of decks that are just like, screw you guys, I'm going for it. And they're just trying over and over. And like, yes, you still need that interaction, but like, because there's so many more of them that are actually trying to proactively win the game or proactively do things, that they are cutting a little bit of that interaction. But not so much that they can't interact, but just enough to where, like, for their particular deck, they can churn through enough to get to it, or they have more win cons or more pieces for their win cons, yada yada. So, like, it almost seems as if some people expect the format to be the same now as it was 5 years ago, and like any other format, they change constantly. I've been playing CDH for more than 5 years, and it changes every single... I mean, we have little dumb names. Like, I mean, I had a couple years ago, I called it the Summer of Adnos because everybody was a Turbo Adnos deck. And then right after that, it was like Stacks Winter because everybody uses doing stacks to combat the Adnos decks. And then after that, it's up and down and it's back and forth. Right now, Stacks is down, Combo's back up, Turbo is a thing again. In a few more years, different cards get printed, Stacks will become a thing again. It's not that they ever go away. It's just like the broad strokes, the things that are most popular, the things that are winning tournaments. Well, Stacks is a bad example because it's not winning any tournaments most of the time, but it is there to combat the stuff that is winning tournaments. So either way, it's also something to be said, which I keep trying to say it, and a lot of people kind of reject the idea that there's a difference between tournament level play, no matter what the format is, and then everything besides that. Like, a deck can still be CPDH or CEDH or whatever competitive format you're playing. It can still be viable at your kitchen table. It can still be viable at your LGS. You might crush local little tournaments and whatever, or not tournaments, but like your FNMs or whatever you're playing at. You may crush those with your deck that, if you took to a tournament, would just simply not be able to perform or keep up. And
I think
that's not to say that some of those decks can't break through, but I still feel like there's a kind of clear cut, this deck probably shouldn't have been brought to a tournament because it doesn't have the tools to get there. And I think that some people are still trying to assess what those things are. I mean, me too, even, because I mean, Sivris still hasn't proven itself as far as like getting a win in a tournament. Like, it feels good. I win at regular tables all the time. but tournament play has shown a 0 win rate. So is it good? I don't know. And I don't discourage people from trying to take their decks and make it to. I mean, I don't think Satyr was. I love Satyr. I have a Satyr Enchanter list too because it reminds me of my Sithis list. But I haven't seen it really post a lot of results. But like you just did, so that's something. There's people that will say that it doesn't matter. It's free for all. It's this. It's that. There's a lot of naysayers to everything. But I still think at the end of the day that there is kind of a split between what is tournament viable and what isn't. I don't think just any deck, just because you built it well, can hang. And I don't know how to make that distinction any better than what I'm saying. It's kind of a feeling that I have, I guess, more than like something I can back up with stats. But it is still a stance.
If I may, not trying to take a hot take or anything like that, but
this is the hot button portion of the show. Yeah. Go for it.
All right. Well, here we go. There is a difference in the format, like definitively. There is a high-powered variant of our format, just like there's a high-powered variant of normal EDH, right? We have, normal Pauper, we have high-power Pauper, and we have tournament Pauper, right? We have those 3 items just like in normal. And, me and David have spoken about it, and I know me and you, Islane, have spoken about it. And I feel that we have the 3 different formats already. And we used to not is the problem. You used to be high power and competitive were the same. That is now gone. We've lost that. We've lost that dynamic. It's now been split. And because that split has happened, it makes it so much more difficult. It's just like you said, I have this deck. I play it all the time with my friends, and I smash them all the time. And I'm going to take it to this tournament. The first time you take it to a tournament, you go 0-4 drop, and you're like, what happened? How did that happen to me? And you didn't come with the right equipment to participate in that event.
Well, in my personal experience, the last time I had one good game, and then I got stuck in 2 3-man pods, which just was not a good time. We also didn't have the same participation, so there was it was only 3 rounds, and then it went to the top cut. I don't feel like I got a fair shake in that one. In this one, I had a better shake, but still ended up with one of those 3-man pods, and it's just, I'm not going to be the guy that's like, oh, boo-hoo, I got screwed, but, that's just kind of what happened. Like, it is what it is.
It is also fair to say, though, like, the decks that you both were playing, specifically the 2 of you, because, honestly, if you look at both of your guys' decks, there's a lot of similarities between them, not on the cards individually themselves, but what your decks are doing and what they're providing to the table. I find them to be very, very similar. And it's just like you said, if those decks make one mistake, you lose the game. If you chose to target the wrong card, you lost the game. And as well, it's like David said, sometimes you're just in a lose-lose scenario sometimes, and you can't get out of it. You're just like looking at the table going, man, I just can't, no matter what I do, because also too, like turn order matters a whole lot. And that goes without said so often in our format. And
turn order is a big thing, and so is mulligans as well. And I think in some cases, if you don't play the deck often enough, you don't mulligan properly. I feel that a lot because, I've done so many reps on Sivris in the last 6 months that in Sivris I can mulligan easy. It's does this win or does this do what I want it to do? Yes, no, throw it away, do another one. When I play some of the other decks, like when I first brew a deck or some of the other decks I have that I don't play that often or I haven't played in a minute, I find that a lot of times I feel like my mulligans are just not there because I know what the deck does, but I'm not like as intimately familiar with it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I think you shouldn't bring a deck to a tournament unless you are that intimately familiar with it, because you're probably going to screw up on your mulligans. Not because you're a bad player, but just because you're not. It's almost like it's like a practice thing. It's like any professional sport, any esport, anything that you do in life that takes time to learn, you have to practice. So
practice makes perfect. Sure. And I mean, just, David here is a perfect example of that, right? Like David was put between, like in that turn order, David was put between me winning or Caitlin winning. So he had to be between the 2 of us, and being this player, you're not. Like, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, so there's no win for you at that point. Because if he chooses to take care of me, Caitlin just wins the game immediately, and vice versa, right? So sometimes you're just left in that situation, and you have to deal with it. And ironically, a lot of people are forgetting the fact that last tournament, David was also in top 4, which is 2 events back to back, and I was also playing the same Malcolm deck with a few changes, but Caitlyn won that event, and she ran us over because she was in seat 4, and me and David were looking at each other in seat 1 and 2 going, haha, I'll stop you, you stop me. Uh-oh, we can't stop her. And
Yeah.
she just plowed through us like we were just sitting ducks, right? So
Yeah.
that's something to definitely to be noted there, that I was still playing a deck that had the potential to win on turn 3, and she just ran us over.
A couple last questions here before we move on to the last few questions I have for you, Gator. I know this has been another thing that has come up in discussion on like the PDH home base and Sanctuary and whatnot. It's about politics and whether or not they're required. Some people have had the hot take that politicking is required to do good in this format. Others are not of that opinion, and some people, politic as they see fit. Did you guys see a lot of politicking in your games, and or do you think that politicking is a necessary evil in the format? We'll start with you, David.
Well, as we mentioned with the game that I had with Gator and the Swiss, it wasn't politicking exactly, but there was a lot of communication about like different lines. Should we counter Ophidian Eye? Should we counter Trickery Charm?
So I should have mentioned because that's how I had it written was also communication. Do you think the communication was
Sure.
along with the politicking?
Yeah, and there was a lot of discussion and trying to figure out what the best lines were, what the best, what would be best for the table in certain situations. And I don't know. I've talked with Gator about this a lot as well. And there's some decks that are by definition more political than others, or decks, I guess I should put it the other way. There are some decks that there is just no politics necessary, like Dargo Kedis, for instance. Like, what are you?
You want me to smash your face or not?
There's a lot of threat assessment. It's not like it's an easy deck to play. Like, there's a ton of threat assessment that goes into it. There's that's like the whole deck is like, who do I attack when? How do I spread up my damage? How do I make sure that I mark the players that I need to mark when I mark them?
I think that's aggro in a nutshell, really.
Very complicated. Yeah, aggro in the format is just it's a complicated thing, and I don't think that gets enough credit. But politics, no, not really. there's not a lot of that going on.
Dargo smash.
Yeah, Dargo smashes, and like the other players may try and talk their way out of getting hit for a turn, but again, with Kedis in play, that doesn't matter at all. Everyone's getting smacked. As far as this tournament goes, I like I said, there was pretty good communication. Everything somebody says in a tournament setting, I think can be, if you squint at it, can be sort of political, right? Just like if I tell you X or Y, I am trying to like
influence,
give you information that is going to eventually help me one way or another. Like, I'm not
right. I may say something like, "Oh, I might have something," but I don't usually. I have a hard time with the flat out statement of like politics are required to be good or to win. I don't think that's the case, but I've definitely had games where it's like, hey man, if you don't hit me with that fucking thing, like I won't blow it up. Hit somebody else.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's part of playing a multiplayer format is trying to both understand who you should be targeting, but also trying to deflect that from yourself onto somebody else when you can. And the best way to do that is with your mouth,
Right. I think where I've had the biggest issue with politics, especially like when I first started playing and some of the groups that I played in, was a lot of the, oh, you're going to hit me? Like the woe is me kind of politicking. I don't really like that. I think that I've gone on record on Gator's podcast that like there are times where I wish that table talk was just banned altogether and you had to be quiet and just say what you're doing and that's it, because the influence that you can have on people, especially somebody who's newer to the format that doesn't really know what the correct answer is, can be detrimental to them learning as well. Because if you take advantage of that, you're just like, hey, yeah, oh, you shouldn't hit me because I'm not doing anything. And then 2 turns later, they win with a combo, and you're like, well, I should have hit you. And they're like, well, that's politics, man. That makes me not want to politic at all. That makes me feel like you're a fucking snake oil salesman, and I don't want to deal with that shit. I want to deal with people that are like Gator, where I'm like, hey, you have something? And he's just like, I don't have shit. I'm like, okay, cool. Then I don't have to rely on you. Like be real about it.
The last finals, Gator and I had a game that was basically like that. There wasn't a lot of table talk at all. We just played our cards, and it was a great game. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
I've just run into a lot of people like that, though, that are very, not even in just this format, and lots of formats. I've played CDH for a lot of years, and there's people that are like that are just like, why are you hitting me? And it's like, well, if nothing else, it's because you're the black player and you use your life as a resource, so I'm going to try and cut that down.
Yeah.
But that even applies a little bit in CPDH, not as much because you don't have the necropotence and the adnos and all the things that actually use your life, but it still kind of applies. But in general, when people are just like trying to deflect like that, I'm just like, that kind of makes me want to hit you more, because you're saying you don't have it, and then I feel like you're just lying to me, and you do have it.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually going to reference the game that David just referenced, right? The last finals with Yami, Caitlin, me, and David. There was one statement said that entire match, and the one statement was said was when I peeked at David's hand and saw his hand and went, "Oh no, we're dead." Like, we're dead. Like, you can't get the Dargo off the table. I can't get the Dargo off the table. I have a grip of counters. You have a grip of counters. Cool, we're dead. And we were quiet. We all knew what we needed to do. Like, we were all like, we got to get the Dargo off the table. We need to do this. We need to do that. But realistically, it's also similar to David was saying earlier. How are certain decks even able to politic, right? Like, how is Gut able to politic? I know you've been the player where Gut looks at you first, is Lane, and they're like, I don't want to hear
mainly
anything
Aaron.
that comes out.
That's basically
right?
mainly Aaron.
Yep.
Oh, I'm just going to hit you first.
How do you politic? Like, you're just like, no, bro, you're dying. I'm sorry. This is how it works.
Yeah.
And
the way I politic with that is I put Echoing Truth and Echoing Decay and other things like that in my deck so that I can just kill all of their stuff. Also in the case of, that's how I won versus Franklin in the one game when I was on Malcolm Kedis, because I had the Echoing Truth and I got to a bounce spell and bounced Gut and then killed all the skeletons, and then he was just like, I can't do anything else. I think you win. And I was like, yeah, cool. So, sometimes you can't. I get that. And some decks really don't rely on it at all. I don't really rely on it ever. My main thing is more communication, as was said earlier, like that's what happens. I'm kind of in the same boat as Gator. I'll tell you I don't have nothing. Or I'll tell you I might have something, but I can't really say, because a lot of the stuff that I run in that deck in particular are conditional. Like, I have a spell that says, pay 2, give -2 to a creature, but then if I sacrifice a creature, it gets -5. So that's great, but maybe I don't have the creature, so I'm like, I can kind of do something, but I can't really, So like, I won't give away the name of the card, but it's like, I'll tell you kind of what I can do or what I can't do. And I think that sort of honesty is, it's a double-edged sword, because in some instances you are giving away information that you probably don't want to, because you might be giving away the information to player 1 when both of you are trying to stop player 2, but now you've also given the information to player 2, and then player 2 is like, okay, well, now I just kill you because you have the thing that stops me, or you've given information to player 4 that now, has something, and then that's just kind of the way it is.
That's exactly what happened in round 1, right? So when Lobert kind of declared what he had declared towards me, that he was going to take me out, and I was just like, why would you do this? And then we proceeded to Lobert's turn, and Lobert went to play his commander. And I was just like, you kind of declared that you were going to send all your resources at me, and you've been attacking me for the past 2 turns. I'm under the assumption that's not going to change. And he didn't say anything. And I was like, I'm just going to daze your commander. I would have never done that play in a million years if he hadn't said what he had said. So, like, there's also the opposite politics where you go out of your way to point the finger. And I've always found that to be like the worst style of politics, especially against me. If you point at me, I'm going to easily be able to deflect against you. I've played for so many years at this point. I'm able to tell you exactly everything that can happen and be like, guys, look, no, but look. And it's not that I'm deflecting. You pointed at me first. So there are certain situations where if you just don't give any information, which is my favorite things to do, you just stay quiet and just let the game go. And that game, once again, pointing at the game with David in the last finals, not the most recent one, that was such a clean game. And what turned it at ends? Like 8, I believe, something like that.
Yep.
I mean, we were like in and out. Like that game was quick, fast, to the point, because at no point we were like talking up a storm. It was just like, yeah, do that. I'm going to counter that. I knew that David was going to kill me the turn that he did. Like I had saw his hand. So as soon as she went to kill me, I was like, yeah, he's going to counter my counter. Like this is happening. I didn't even try to politic out of it. I was just like, okay, show it to me. Like, take me out now. And he's like, of course, take you out. All right, you're gone. Get off my table now. I'm like, okay, fair. And I scooped up my cards. Like, we knew what was going to happen, which was, I don't know, kind of strange in retrospect when you look back at it. But honestly, it was so much fun for me. So
the last question that I had was kind of a two-parter, but we basically kind of already covered it with what we've said already. It was just, were you happy with your results each round, and what could you have done better? I mean, obviously, you may have some things you might think you could have done better, Gator, but you won the thing, so, I mean, you probably did all right. And David, you already said that you kind of had some spots where maybe you made some mistakes and whatever, but you won the games that you could win, and you made it to the finals. I've already expressed that I made a huge mistake in the first round, and outside of that, I felt like I didn't have much to say about the rest of the games. So, if you have any further thoughts, you could say them now. Otherwise, I think we pretty much kind of already covered those questions.
I did want to mention before you get into the interview with Gator, first off, the tournament was run very well.
Shout out to Bobby and the Sanctuary.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Always happy to play in the Sanctuary events. They've been really great. And also the field was awesome. 20 players, 20 different decks. Just every round was a treat to see like who was bringing what.
It was definitely better than that league final where the two of you were on Gretchen. I'll tell you what, I absolutely hated that.
No, it was a very diverse field, as diverse as you could get. Everybody was playing something different, and it was great, and I can't wait for the next event, whenever that happens to be.
Me too. Yep. All right, well then, I guess the last thing we have here is a few questions I have for Gator, just because you won the thing, and I did an interview with you the last time you won. I've already done one with you, so I figured I'd do another one. So, first question, you've already kind of gone over this a little bit, but just if there's any further thoughts, how did this tournament compare to the last one you won? So, Gator won the first Sanctuary and now the third Sanctuary tournament. Obviously, besides like playing a different deck, is there anything that stands out to you that was, a lot different than the first time?
It was a lot different. The thing with the first one was when people tapped out against me in the first one, I was able to win the game. So
stop reminding me.
There was a breaking point in that event where it was just like, hey, you guys tapped out. Okay, I could win now. I didn't have that same effect with Malcolm and Kedis. Malcolm and Kedis was like, I'll be able to fight these things off, or I could do certain things to kind of go around it. But also, I'm not going to give myself an excuse, but I was in like seat 1 a lot during the day, and that really helped me out. Like I was in seat 1 for the finals. I was in seat 1 against Puzzle. I was in seat 1 against David. So I had 3 seat 1s throughout the day.
I got 1.
Yeah, should definitely be said. If players don't think seed order is relevant, it very much is.
My seat 1, I was completely irrelevant. That was in the second game where Carter just made me get smashed the whole game. There was nothing I could do about it.
I get it. Carter's always been a weird deck to me. I still don't know how that deck functions. Truth be told, because it's like every time I look at it, it's a deck that says everyone hits each other, but I'm also playing 30 removal spells. So if you I'll just kill all your creatures, but then you don't hit each other. And that was the dynamic that my game had, is that we kept wrathing our field and we had no creatures. So no one could actually take me out of the game, even if they wanted to at a point. So the deck brings up very strange board states and kind of conflicts with itself. So it's always been one of those to me. But
so this one should get your gears turning. Do you feel that Malcolm and Kedis is a stronger deck than Abdel and Swordco Sailor, and why or why not?
Ooh, that's a.
I knew I'd hit you with one of them.
That's a rough one to fit my play style. Personally, for me, myself, and I think Malcolm Kedis is a better fit for me.
Oddly enough, because that's like the deck you didn't make. That's like been around forever, whereas you were the guy that was the Abdel guy. At least when I saw you playing it, it was like your baby.
So I like Abdel because I believe Abdel, this is going to be a weird statement and kind of follow my train of thought. I believe Abdel is one of the strongest mid-range decks in the format. It's not a mid-range deck, but it can.
I kind of have that feeling about it too, is that it is sort of mid-rangey. It is a combo deck, but it still feels like it takes a minute to get there.
Yep. And the deck is slow. And part of the problem that deck had originally was everybody used to say it was blitzing fast, and it's not. The deck is slow. And one reason I was able to win with it in the first tournament is I demonstrated how slow it was during the event. I was just like, no, do your thing. And they're like, you're not going to win. I'm like, no, I'm slow. And then they would tap out, and then I would win. And they're like, hey, you said you were slow. I was like, it's like turn 8 now, bro. Like, yeah, I could win now. So,
my experience playing with Abdel Blue is the same. Like, I didn't win any faster than like turn 7 or 8. Like, it's not that fast. It does have potential to go faster if you get the nut draw and nobody has interaction, sure. But so does every other fucking deck, pretty much, that has combo.
Exactly. And I've always felt Abdel has one of, if not the strongest long game in the entire format, because the deck is just so overly redundant. And I like that it could pivot. That's my favorite part. Even if you stop me from comboing, I could just make an army and beat you to death with it. And Malcolm and Kedis doesn't have that. But I love the intricacies that Malcolm Kedis brings with the storming aspect. And I really enjoy the tempo plays that Malcolm and Kedis brings to the team.
And then it also has that overall, like, just drain effect from pingers. Over the course of time, you can also... And in a meta that has Sivris and the Abdel Black and other decks that are just... Or Larry is a great... Larry alley-oops the shit out of me, which is why I was pissed, because it was Larry player that DC'd in my round 3. And would have probably helped me win that game. Sivris and Larry love each other because it's just drain, and then one of us wins. And usually before a combo player can get there. But yeah, I think Abdel's strong, but I think it is very much slower than Malcolm Kedis. I would agree with you there.
Abdel is a deck that if you really want to learn the format, really get into those long games and really get your skills going, Abdel is the deck that'll do it, because it'll teach you how to create triggers. It'll teach you what order to put them in. It'll teach you why you're doing what you're doing to begin with. And it'll also give you a hell of a satisfaction of doing the thing. Even if you make a million soldiers, and lose the game, you're like, bro, I made a million soldiers. I lost, whatever. Like, like it is what it is. So
I think they're both very strong, but they're on different axes.
Definitely.
Next question would be, so how did you prepare for this tournament?
Oh, you're gonna not like this answer. I did absolutely nothing.
All right.
For this one specifically, I did literally nothing. I had been playing a lot of Magic the weeks prior to the event, but like the 2 weeks before the event, I pretty much didn't play but like one game, and that was...
Yeah, I was trying to get you into a game at some point, and we just never had it happen.
Yeah, I've been really busy with just like life and stuff in general, so I just haven't been able to play a lot of games. Weeks prior to that, I was doing a lot of games, really getting Malcolm and Kedis and Malcolm and Arden to a point to be able to take them to a tournament. And so like Chinaman and all of them were coming to my house, and we would get a lot of like in-person table games in. But after that, I mean, we went several weeks without playing a game, sadly.
All right, so if you're Gator, you just don't need to practice and you just win tournaments. Got it. Next question. So, do you feel, and you pretty much have already answered this by your play, but given your track record, you played Abdel Sword Coast first tournament, and then you played Malcolm Kedis 2 tournaments in a row. So I guess that does give this question some credence. Do you feel it's better to play the same deck in multiple tournaments, or once you've basically quote unquote proven it, you've won with it, is that the point where you feel like you can move on to something else? And I suppose the real answer to that question will come in Sanctuary 4 if you play one of the decks you've already played or play something different, because you took down the tournament with Abdel, and then you were like, I'm going to play something else, and then you played it, you lost, and then you played it, and you won. Either way, you've been in all the finals, and I find that like the only way I'm ever going to be able to win one of these things is if you fucking sit out. You and your spawn.
Me too. Me too.
Like no more Jacksons allowed.
So ironically, the Abdel deck that was in the finals was literally my deck, not like my list, like literally my physical deck. Yep. Like I gave it to him, he took it home, and he played it. So like the deck he was literally using was mine. So I was actually going to play Abdel in the tournament because I had done so much work. Well, let me rephrase my statement. I was actually going to play Malcolm Arden in the tournament, but I wasn't able to get the cards for it. So then I was like, I'm just going to play Abdel. But then Franklin asked me to borrow Abdel. And I was like, oh, dude, take it. Not a problem. I'm like, I have no issues playing Malcolm Kedis. But I really wanted to play Malcolm Arden because I find the deck to be incredibly powerful. But is my favorite color scheme. So it's Izzet and Boros right there with each other. And I was like, I'll play it. This is my newest version. And I have been just laying waste to my friends when we play against each other. So I was like, too easy. I'll play it, you guys. I love the deck. It's one of my favorite decks. And I actually also play it in CEDH now. So I was like, you know what? Malcolm Kedis, all formats. So
Malcolm Kedis recently took down the Mox Masters Invitational, I think it was. So
yeah,
it's still strong in CEDH too. Having Glinthorn makes it a lot stronger, I'd argue, just because it is a literal 1-card win con with Malcolm.
Exactly.
But we still have that. You have to have 2 cards, but it's still close. And when I played it in CEDH years ago, I don't play it anymore. I actually scrapped my CEDH version to make the Pauper version, but when I used to play it, it was Glinthorn combo plus all the same stuff that we're already doing in Pauper. So there was a couple other cards that you can run, like Pyre of Heroes, which is kind of cool because you can like slam a Ragavan and then pyre it into a 2-drop pirate and then pyre it into a Glinthorn. So another way to get there, but yeah, I digress. I mean, I guess final answer is, do you think that that's kind of what you've been doing? You're like proving a deck and then you're going to move on, or is it just whatever you feel like playing?
Honestly, I like to prove the same deck twice. I believe that all decks that go into the top 4 should be equally represented. I know that might be a hot take to most people, but getting to the top 4 is an achievement on its own. And even if you don't win, your top 4 performance should still be acknowledged. And if a deck makes the top 4, that deck should be definitely like looked at. So the fact that I top 4'd with Malcolm Kedis last time, I was actually completely satisfied with that. I was like, you know what? I did it. I got it there. I'm super content with this result. And I played it again because I did, and I love the deck, and I was able to win with it. Things went well for me that day. Luck is obviously involved with that as well, but I was able to get there. And if I had the opportunity again, if meta slows down a little bit, I'd definitely play Abdel again. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I think Abdel is incredibly powerful, if not one of the strongest decks. I mean, I will say it is, in my opinion, it is one of the strongest decks in the entire format. So
I don't disagree with you, and the records speak to that. So what would be your advice for someone who wants to get involved in the tournament scene? So somebody who maybe has already been dipping their toes in the format at large, but wants to take that next step. What would you tell them? Like, how would you guide them to get to that point?
I actually have a few different things. One, get in touch with some of the better players that are posting results. Like they're actively posting results, and they're actively out there in the community as well. Like David here is a prime example. Top both tournaments back to back, right? And you're also another example. You didn't top this event, right? But you've also played one deck, and that's my other example. If you're playing one deck consistently, that knowledge that that player holds is very important to a new player because they've done the deed. They've gone over and over and over again, similar to like somebody like Stein playing Zada just over and over and over again, right?
Yeah, that episode of yours that I edited had Stein and and Aaron talking about gut and just the sheer amount of reps that they put into them. Even though neither posted top end results, they've still put that time in to prove that that deck is viable. And I don't think that a deck necessarily has to post top end results to be considered viable, even within that distinction between tournament level and under tournament level. I think still just being able to post records and having that's one thing we'll say about Clay's Clay and the RC and everything and all the stuff they've put into like CPDH guide and the stat tracking and all of that does kind of give some weight to some of these decks that maybe haven't posted a top result but that still have decent win rates and that can show that a deck is consistent and a particular player is good at playing the deck.
I disagree a hair with you there, just a little bit. And the only thing I do is I think there needs to be a point to where that deck does eventually show itself in one of the scenes, right?
I'd agree. And I'm trying to get there with Sivris. It just hasn't worked out yet.
I think you'll get there. I do believe that you are suffering a little bit of that, like, hey, that is the Sivris guy, take him off the table effect. I have seen that happen in some of the games that you've played just casually and stuff like that. Yeah. So, and with, I think that's going to be happening to David here soon with his win rate and topping all these events as well. I think he's going to suffer that here sooner than later, but definitely reach out to players. I know a lot of the people in the community are super nice and they're more than welcome to talk with you. I know if you reach out to me, Islane, David, any of the three of us, we'd be more than happy to talk to you about deck building or even just like, why we choose to do this over something else, right? So
yeah, for sure. I think that there are a lot of resources out there. The guide is great for just a breadth of knowledge. I think getting into players' heads that have been playing a same deck over and over again is another good resource. I would also say in some regards that there are content creators out there that are putting out videos that, are deck techs and or other analytical pieces. I know David's been doing some of that stuff on his channel as far as look at these cards that you maybe never thought about because maybe they'll slot into your deck. And, just other thought pieces and things. So those are resources that are out there for you to watch and pick up things from. Not everybody agrees on everything that everybody's putting out. So, there's going to be some stuff that you might take worth a grain of salt. But for the most part, if you're interested in the format, the resources are out there for you to find stuff. And then most of us have Discord servers or we're on Twitter or we're reachable somewhere. To where if you want to contact us and have a discussion, you can, and we can provide wisdom. But I'd say probably talk to these guys before you talk to me because they're actually posting results. We'll just leave that there.
Too, if you're looking to get involved in the tournament scene and you have the time for it, definitely practice a lot of different decks. Moxfield is great for this. You can Goldfish, or what I do is I open up 4 tabs in my browser and we'll play pods against each other sometimes to see if how this deck that I'm considering, how does it perform against other decks? And since I'm playing each seat and, I get to work on my threat assessment, who looks the scariest at this point. And I get to work on learning how those decks operate as well. When I was first getting into the format, some of the combo decks, Abdel felt really difficult to me because I wasn't sure of all the lines and it can be a very intricate deck. So I played a bunch of games with it on Moxfield and I slowly I learned how it operates and how to both play with it and play against it. And I think that's really important just get in reps with a lot of different things. So if you come across a deck in a tournament setting, you'll at least it won't be the first time that you're seeing it.
I think another thing that helps with that too, if you don't want to go to that length, which I applaud you for sitting there and playing a whole game of solitaire with 4 players. That's crazy. I usually just goldfish and then
that's great as well.
It's good, but it doesn't give you the full experience. I think what you're doing is probably better to learn multiple decks at the same time. My problem would be trying to like suss out what I'm doing with each one of those, especially if they're all decks you don't really know. You're like, I have my deck, I know my deck, and then you have these 3 other decks that you've never played against or you don't know what they do, and trying to figure out what they're trying to do to stop your deck and vice versa. That can be a lot of complication that someone who's new to the format might have trouble with. Not to say that it's a bad piece of advice, just saying that that could be a little overwhelming. Another thing that you can do is join like the Sanctuary or the PDH home base and other places where people are playing games regularly. And you can get in and be like, hey, I'm a new player. I don't really know what I'm doing. Can we, kind of play a slower paced game? And, a lot of people will be willing to sit there with you and be like, okay, this is what's happening, or I'm going to do this, and they'll explain to you what they're doing. Or if you make a play that's obviously bad, they may be like, hey, maybe don't do that because you're neglecting to see this. And I've found that this community is very, very welcoming, and a lot of that kind of stuff has happened with me in playing games with people over the course of the last, year and a half or so. Is that, people with more experience will point out things that you're doing wrong. Also, if there's a deck that you like, Moxfield is great. You can search up the particular deck that you might be interested in. What I usually do is like search for the commander name and then go to like most viewed and then look for the one that has a primer. Because people will actually write out a I have a primer for my Civrus list so that people that come around to it, it just looks like a pile of cards. You don't know what it's doing. But in the primer, you can explain, like, these are the cards you're looking for. This is what you want to mulligan for. This is the combo pieces. Or if there isn't a combo, these are the pieces you want to look for because this establishes your engine to win a game or whatever. So the resources are there. You just have to look. And reaching out to anybody who knows where the resources are, we can point you in that direction.
Yep, definitely agree.
All right, so last question. I know you also play CEDH because you've played on my channel and we've spoken about some of the differences and whatnot. How would you say your experiences have differed between the formats? I don't know. I know you play competitively like at your LGS and whatnot. I don't know if you've taken down tournaments and stuff, but how's your experience differed between like the community and threat assessment and all the things that we've talked about today? Like, would you say that they're kind of on an even playing field, or are there noticeable differences between the formats, or do you just like playing competitively and you don't care?
Yeah, it's a bit of a loaded question for me, sadly to say. I've had a lot of negative online experiences, sadly enough. So I tend not to play too often online. So I just like to play. We have a really big community here in person. So we play a lot in person, me and my daughter both. So we have a ton of fun in person, and it's great. But excluding in person, I have a tendency not to really play CDH, excluding with like either friends online. But like randomly in a lot of Discord servers, I quit playing because I've just had so many like negative experiences with like some of my favorite cards. Like I don't even play Anya Falkenrath is one of my favorite cards. I know it's not the most competitive thing, but it's still one of my favorite cards, and
it was pretty good at one point.
And no one knows the rules on the card though. So like I have to sit there and explain the rules on the card every single time I sit down to play with it. So I just said the hell with it, and I'm just not. So
all right, so IRL pretty good, online not so much. Got it.
Yeah. Sadly.
Well, I just wanted to touch on that because I know you play both formats. For me, I obviously do this channel that's CDH mostly, and I will say that I've found that the Pauper community is a lot more welcoming and friendly, but I have had a lot of great experiences either way, so I wouldn't want to discourage anybody from trying out either. If you play any sort of EDH, they're all fun in their own way. You just got to find your people, basically. All right, well, thank you so much, guys, for joining me here on this little talk about that tournament. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next one. hoping that eventually I get to be the guy that gets interviewed instead of the guy doing the interviews. But we'll see if that happens. But yeah, congrats again on your win, Gator. Congrats to the top 4 again, Onk. I actually didn't even realize you made top 4 the last time, so good on you. Glad to see that you guys are having success, and hopefully I'll be able to join you in the winner circle soon. So
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
And
looking forward to seeing you in the finals.
yeah,
so definitely thank you again, Islane, for everything, and big shout outs to once again Bobby for the fantastic event, and
sure.
definitely the PDH pod, you guys hosting it, doing the commentary and all that. So really appreciate you guys. So
Absolutely.
yeah, the whole PDH community, you guys have been great. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for us here. Again, I'm looking to do a little bit more PDH content in the future. If you are not aware, in a couple weeks, well, this following this will probably get posted before it happens. We're only a couple days away. Yeah, this will probably get posted tomorrow. Very soon from after the point that this is posted, there is another tournament that's happening, hosted by Chris from One More Game and a couple other folks from the community. They're doing a charity stream and/or tournament, which sounds cool. I unfortunately can't make it. It's a blackout day for work for me, but the week following, I'm doing another CPDH marathon stream. So it's going to start at 12 noon Pacific and run until like 10 p.m. my time. So it's going to be late for East Coasters, but those who have signed up on the later time frames are able to do that. But yeah, there's a lot more on the horizon. I'm sure that Sanctuary is probably going to do another league. There's going to be more tournaments. Other people, the format seems to be growing, so there's going to be more of this stuff coming. If you're interested and you want to get involved, reach out to people. Get involved on the Discords. There's plenty of places to play, practice, brew, theorycraft, all that stuff. So that's all we got. We'll see you guys next time.